You're listening to the Life Purpose Advisor Podcast, episode 52.
Your purpose is a difference you want to make. It's always outward directed. It might be for people, it might be for animals, the earth, organizations, but there's this just difference that's just, aching almost. You'd like to get out of you.
You're listening to the Life Purpose Advisor Podcast.
Life purpose, spirituality, higher calling, personal growth, meaningful life.
We ask the deep questions about living a balanced life of meaning, purpose, and joy.
Passion, know thyself, be mindful, spiritual practice, aha moments, life lessons, balance.
It is time to welcome your host, Angie Swartz.
Hello and welcome to the show today. If this is your first time listening, I'm glad to have you. And if you're returning, thank you so much for your loyalty. You can find everything we discussed today at our show notes at lifepurposeadvisor.com/52. That's lifepurposeadvisor.com/52. I'm very interested in the discussion that we are going to have today with J V Crum III. J V Crum, JD MBA, became a self-made entrepreneur millionaire in his 20s. He is a best-selling author, keynote speaker, certified business coach, licensed attorney, serial entrepreneur. I'm running out of breath. Huffington Post columnist on conscious business and is host of the #1 ranked Conscious Millionaire podcast, which is broadcast Monday through Friday. He is the founder and CEO of Conscious Millionaire Institute, LLC, a global entrepreneur, business coaching, training, and wealth product business. JV, welcome to the show today.
Well, Angie, I am excited to be here. And, we're both on purpose, and that's exciting as well.
Isn't it?
Yep.
We have so much to talk about. This podcast might take us until tomorrow.
Well, I've got 12 hours before tomorrow morning comes.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what we get into. You might be listening, folks, to the next 24 episodes.
We can make
a
lot of segments out of this.
So JV has an amazing bio on his website at consciousmillionaire.com that we're going to talk, I'm sure, about many of the things that he talks about in there. But I would direct you to his website under his About column. He talks in detail about what brought him to today. So take a look there. But if you could, tell us a little bit about that and tell me what's keeping you busy today and what's keeping you in line with your life purpose.
Well, we were chatting a little bit before we started, and just a week ago, I went out in the Rocky Mountains thinking I was going to be spending a night and the next day going horseback riding and taking some hikes along creeks. But I followed my intuition, and first I stopped at a place and I was camping, and I bought 2 cords of wood, which is normally about twice what you would normally do for your fire pit. And then I got to the park and I said, I think I need more wood. So I bought a 3rd cord. Now, there's something important about that because I am the 3rd, and things happen in my life in 3s. My formulas and my steps and almost everything I do has a 3 to it. So I wasn't shocked by that. And then I set up the tent and I got on the, sat on the table and I lit this fire. And then I had this strong intuition to make the fire really big. So I kept adding wood and kept adding wood. And this went on for about 3 hours. I had this really bright burning, and it was like it came and burned in a purification way at a soul level. And I started seeing my purpose, which I had known for a long time, but I started seeing ways that I really could help more people with my purpose. And that just kind of left me in this completely transformed state. And so I go in the tent, and about 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke. I know it's 3, folks, because I take my cell phone with me, right? My cell phone's my friend. And I look at the cell phone, it's 3, and I can't go back to sleep. I actually laid on my back for 3 hours. And in my mind, I created 3 programs, that I now have landing pages for, that I'm now beginning to sell. And it's only been, just a matter of days, actually. And at 6 o'clock in the morning, it's still pitch black. I'm supposed to go horseback riding. I have a 3-hour horseback ride, of course, scheduled. And I said, you got everything you were supposed to get. And I kind of wrestled with that for about 5 minutes because I said, yeah, but I was planning to take the day in the park. And I said, you got everything you're supposed to get. Go back home and start working on this. So I got up in the pitch black took the flashlight so I could see the tent and took it down, threw it all in my SUV, and hightailed out of there. And that flame, within about 2 or 3 days, was inside of me totally and just flaming big. And I was transforming tremendously. And by Wednesday, I said, well, this is non-sustainable, because I was also doing a ton of interviews, both as a guest and for my own podcast. And I said, this is not sustainable. And by Friday morning, it wasn't. I actually had to cancel 7 podcasts, which is very unusual, recordings for my own show. So you kind of get another spiritual number into this, right? You kind of go, wow, that's interesting. And then I spent 3 days in bed, literally digesting it, not with the flu or anything like that, just my whole being exhausted. And I laid there and I kept making soup, chicken broth, throwing a lot of vegetables in it, and mainly sleeping and digesting what had happened. And it's amazing, because this whole month now I planned a webinar. I planned all kinds of things that at the beginning of the month were not on the schedule, and we're not that far into the month. So it's interesting what happened.
Take us back. An amazing story. So take us back and give us a little bit more detail. So you got there, you bought 3 cords of wood.
3 cords.
And you were looking into this fire, and you said you saw what you were supposed to do. And what did that look like? Were you hearing inspiration in your mind? Were you seeing images in the fire? What was happening?
Yeah, that's a great question, Angie. Because I've got 9 years of NLP, so I pay a lot of attention to sensory things. I tend to get most everything visually. And then my synesthesia is I get it kinesthetically, but it's not voices. That's not usually what happens. And it was... as I looked in the fire, I kept seeing words, and I kept seeing what was it that I was supposed to be helping people with. Because I'm working with marketing people, and we were going to bring out a lot of stuff, which we're still bringing out. But I realized, wait a minute, all these quote-unquote soft pieces, because I'm like a real expert at putting systems, processes, steps, sequences, do it in my sleep. However, I really love and am really talented at helping people discover their purpose. No accident we're on this call, right? And I'm really great at helping them figure out, well, what's the business model supposed to be? And then I have this whole area that I've done research on. It's the 7th chapter in my book, and it's on Millionaire Inner Zone. It's about steps to get in the flow and synchronicity and how to create all that at will. And I have thought for about 3 years, that's really what you ought to be teaching people. And I created a whole program. So it's a two-month program so that I can teach it to people. And then this webinar that I'm going to do, First Million webinar, one of the options at the end is going to be doing a smaller version of that for about 4 or 5 weeks, because people like small, short things, where I'm going to be teaching people in a group how to get in their zone and how to connect with the flow, and then how to utilize that in their business and their networking, and how to get the right mindset so they can go out there and do things like I was at the California Women's Conference last year. Arianna Huffington was there. I wanted to meet her, so I signed one of my books, Conscious Millionaire, to her, and went up and met her with only the intention of just planting the seeds that I actually existed on the earth. And here was this, whole brand around Conscious Millionaire. And she looked at it, and she looked at me, and she didn't say anything for about 3 or 4 seconds. And she says, "You want to be a writer for me?" And I of course said yes. And she gave me her card, and in 2 weeks, I had my own column on the Huffington Post. That's living in the zone. And if there's only one thing I can really teach people, that's the most important thing I could teach them. Because when you can do that, you walk in a room and you just connect with all the right people.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that the truth of it? And magical things.
It's like magic, but really what's happening is that you're connected with the same field of energy that they're connected with. And then, because part of that's about being authentic. And when you're authentic, my observation, I'm first had pre-med, so I was kind of a science background. So can I prove this quote-unquote hypothesis? No. Do I absolutely believe at 100% level it's true? Yes. That when we live in authenticity, open and present, that everything that we need for our soul's journey and everything that everyone we come in contact with needs actually occurs. At an ego level, you may have people really pissed off at you because they didn't get what they wanted. That's a different matter. But I do believe that we all got what
Let's
was
talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's huge difference between want and soul level.
Huge.
Yes, it's very big. So,
And I really want to go back and talk a little bit more about your experience with the fire. But before we do, one question about that. Why do you think, and I have my own answer for this, but why do you think so many people have such a hard time living in the flow?
I think that because I've been doing it for so long that I can think back to, what were the beginning stages, is because, I'm a strategic planner. I believe that everybody should have strategic plans for how they build their business. But when you live in the flow, you have to be willing to let go of all those structures. And you have to be willing to surrender into the path that appears before you on a momentary basis. And initially, learning to do that can be very scary, right? Because you've literally, the only way that I know to live in the flow is to let go of the control. You're not in control, but you're in connecting with perfect timing that's all around you, which is a better experience. So once you learn to do it, it's kind of like Richard Bach's book, Illusions. And I've read that book I don't know how many times. It was my favorite book for 10 years. Right after Martin Buber's I Am Thou was my favorite book for 10 years. So in Illusions, they tells the story at the beginning, the introduction, about this little creature that's at the bottom of a river, and the river's flowing, and they're all clinging to the rocks. And everybody's telling this little creature, you got to cling to the rock, because if you let go, you're going to be destroyed by the river. And the little creature lets go and enters the flow and surrenders, and all of a sudden finds the magical journey. And so it's the scary part is that letting go and learning to trust. But what you're trusting actually isn't external to you. You're really trusting your own authenticity. You're learning. It's an exercise in being kind of in a Zen mirror way with yourself. It's an exercise of learning to trust you. And that's very, very scary if you've never done it before. Mm-hmm. And I think that's
sometimes very scary when you have done it
before. Right? Yeah, I've just kind of gotten used to doing it, so I tend to do it. However, I think initially that's the fear part.
Mm-hmm. Since we're here on this discussion, tell me about your spiritual beliefs. So you mentioned that it's an internal thing that you're trusting, but do you think that there's something bigger as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that's all part of the same whole. So when I say that you're connected to the perfect timing, to me that's the infinite field, which you can say is God or the universe or higher power, whatever words you like. I mean, it's beyond anything that is conceptual. And for me, I've been on this kind of journey all my life. However, when I went and lived at a Buddhist monastery for a while and to really learn meditation, that's when I started getting glimpses of what we call the gap, which is where that infinite occurs. And what I had known intellectually became experiential, that it's not that the infinite that we can experience when we come back and we try to write about it, or we put it within a cultural, context or a religious context, if that's where we're coming from, then we're going to be putting all these filters onto it, because we can't describe in concepts what is beyond concept. We can only experience what is beyond concept. Mm-hmm. And that's really a piece of what we're doing when we're in the flow. From a spiritual standpoint, we're connecting with the infinite intelligence that's all around us. And because we're connecting with it, what is energy? If we go back to Einstein, right? Energy can't be destroyed. It's infinite. Energy really is just little packets of information. So everything that's occurring all around us is infinite packets of information. And the more aware or conscious we become, the more we pick up that information. For example, I was in Kenya on a private safari, and my banker had suggested I take a book of options with me, so I did, because I like numbers. And about 4 days before the embassies were blown up, I was keeping a journal, and this is 1998, and I start writing things like, And I had another month of safari. I was supposed to go to Uganda and Tanzania, all paid for, all scheduled. And I started writing things like I'm going to be leaving, which was kind of mysterious, right? And I all of a sudden felt compelled to start reading this book on options. And mind you, I'd never traded options in my life. And sure enough, on that Friday, they blew up the American embassy. And on that Saturday, I had my driver take me to the airport, and I got the last ticket, which happened to have gone to London from Kenya. That was it. And I had 2 stops. One was Dubai, and I didn't know what Dubai was. So I asked them, are they friendly? They like us? Because I don't want to be like going at this moment in time to an Arab country when we have no idea who did this. They said, no, it's okay. You can go there. And I have to say, it was a beautiful airport. And then I get to London at like 6:30 in the morning on a Sunday, and I left on a Saturday morning in Kenya. And I hadn't read the newspapers, and I felt compelled to go out and buy all these financial newspapers. And I spent the whole day in my hotel reading the financial newspapers and said, oh my God, the stock market is going to collapse. Russia is on the verge of collapse. Now, they didn't say that, but I saw it. And Monday, I went in and I sold every stock that I own. And by Friday, I'd done a trade where I'd made $12,000 in a day on Thursday, and I'd never traded before. And I'm reading this book, and I got up and I literally, I call it asking the universe. I get a lot of my intuition visually in my forehead. And I said, I want to make $100,000. And in my forehead was buy 50 S&P puts, and it gave the strike pass. It had it written out. And I went in and I actually bought 100 because you get greedy, but then nothing had happened at the end of the day, and that was $100,000, and I felt uncomfortable with that. So I sold off down to the 50, and I went to Bruges for the weekend. And all weekend long, I knew that on Monday I was going to make $100,000. I saw it all. And on Monday, I get to Brussels, and there's the 5-hour time difference, 6 hours actually there. And I go, at that time, there was no, you didn't have internet on your computers in 1998. In the same way. And so I went to an internet cafe, paid him, I think, $50 for the day, sat in front of a terminal, didn't even go to the bathroom. And about an hour and a half before the stock market closed, I had to keep pushing it because there was no streaming data. So I had to keep refreshing it like every 2 seconds. All of a sudden it dove. I sold and I made exactly $100,000. That's information you pick up out of that field of infinite information and energy that's all around you, and that's part of being connected to the perfect timing and the flow of life. So it's infinitely valuable on a business and financial level that you're making your business decisions not just with your left brain, but with your whole brain and with your whole being, because you picked up this information in your body. You pick it up through a multiple of sensory ways, and for some people it may be a voice. For me, it's this visual that I get, and usually it has a kinesthetic, like a tingling in my spine. In fact, that's exactly how I got Conscious Millionaire. And I knew that it was not only my calling, but it was my assignment. And I immediately said, yes, oh my God, this is so cool.
That's exactly how I wrote the whole program for Life Purpose Advisor. Same thing, body tingling, download, all of the same.
Well, in writing the book, Conscious Millionaire, there's a point in which I believe it's in chapter 3. You move your chapters around so many times, you go, I think I put that in chapter.
Where is that now?
Yeah, I think it's in chapter 3 where yes, it is. And I just saw it. So when I'm talking about visionary consciousness, and then I put in a line, right, because you want to speak to people at different levels. And I said, most of this book was written from being in visionary consciousness. And what I learned is my best writing came from allowing and this is how I described it, my ego to slide to the left. And it's not an entity writing through me. It's not a channel book. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I'm connected to a bigger field of knowingness. And then I just start writing, and this amazing stuff would come out. And I'd read the paragraph and go, oh my gosh, that's incredible, right? And I'm not being egotistical about it. I'm like going, wow, I just wrote that. That's amazing. And I had to get out of the way to allow everything that's in me and everything that's coming into me to come out in a way that's going to be useful to the reader. That's when I was the most powerful at writing. And it's still when I'm the most powerful at writing. I mean, when I write emails and they write themselves, basically, and you get through and you go, I don't want to edit this too much. I kind of like the way it came out, right?
I'm so glad that you're talking about this, because I think it's very hard to conceive of how this concept works if you've never experienced it before.
Right.
And I'm a big fan, and I imagine you are too. I'm a big fan of journaling for this reason.
Exactly. I have everybody journaling, right? Right.
Right. Because you have to get that top layer of soot off of your mind.
And that's kind of what was going on. We were talking about the fire. That's really what was going on, is I was getting layers and layers deeper and going, wait a minute. Yes, you are supposed to teach businesses how to put the right systems in. That's a gift that you have. But you have this other gift of, it took me years to get that purpose. But now I designed a program that only has 3 sessions, and it only has 3 sessions, not because I like 3, but I can help anybody. I believe, I said, can you do this with anybody in 3 sessions? And I said, yeah, that I can take somebody and take them through a process and find their true north in 3 sessions, because I know what I'm looking for and I know how to listen. It's about listening.
So, tell us more about the 3 steps.
So the 3 steps, and if you're listening, I'm going to invite you to journal, right? We're talking about journaling. There's no accidents here, folks, right? So here's the things I want you to journal about. I want you to journal about, I'm going to give you the big picture: passion, purpose, and what I call your natural strengths or your personal genius. So in terms of passion, what I've identified is there are exactly 3 things that will help you identify that deeper passion that you have. The first one is about time. When you're doing that deeper passion that you have, you think a half hour passed and you look at the clock and it was 4 hours. And this happens over and over and over again. And sometimes it's wonderful, and then sometimes you told people you're going to meet them, especially when it's your relationship, and maybe it's not so wonderful, but it's what happens. You just get totally involved in the experience. Second,
and that's when you're in the flow.
That's
right?
when you're in the flow. Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And then the second one is the emotion. And I drilled down and drilled down and drilled down. I said, no, this is the exact emotion. I don't think it varies per person. They may experience it completely different, because we all experience their sensations in our own unique way. But it's the experience of just absolute, I only want to say divine, complete, absolute joy that pervades your entire being, and it just exudes from you. And we know when we see somebody and they're in joy, their face looks different, their energy looks different, their skin looks different, right? You're in this place of great joy. The third piece is that I can guarantee you have probably done this to help other people or to share it with other people for absolutely free, even though you could choose a lot of money for it, because you just get so much joy from doing it. I love to coach people. I love to help people find their potential, connect with it and give them some tools to do something with it. And yes, I do it all the time for free. I was thinking earlier today, I was on a flight with somebody and I gave them, in 2 hours, I did a whole coaching with them. I had transformed their business in 2 hours. Why? And did I charge them? No. Was this worth, $5,000? Yes, absolutely. Did I charge them anything? No. I just wanted to help them out. So the first thing is to journey about the deeper passion. Then the second part is purpose. And I sold companies because I was not living my purpose, and I had done enough reading of personal and spiritual growth books and going to sweat lodges and, spiritual retreats and Tony Robbins and Wayne Dyer and all of these things, looking for what was missing in my life. And I knew that was living my purpose, but I didn't know what it was. And I went out and I'd go 2 to 3 weeks at a time camping and, connecting to the earth. And I read a lot of books because that's my style. And I would read sentences, and you might have read some of these as well. You're listening and you're going, yeah, I've been looking for my purpose too. And there'd be things like, when you find your purpose, you will know it, which sounds so amazingly new age spiritual, right?
Especially when you haven't found your purpose. You're like, right, whatever.
Yeah, I'm going like, well, that's very helpful. Thank you so much. I was kind of thinking that I might know it once I kind of had the aha moment. But how do I have that? And here's the secret. I want to give it to you. I want you to write it down. I want you to journal about this. Think of purpose as like this golden coin, right? A gold coin. You always remember that. On one side, there's the word purpose. But on the other side, there's how you discover your purpose. Here it is. Your purpose is a difference you want to make. That's what the purpose is. It's always outward directed. It might be for people. It might be for animals, the earth, organizations. But there's this just difference that's just, aching almost. You're like to get out of you. So journal about if you could wake up every morning and spend the rest of your life making this difference, that'd be the difference you want to make. Yes.
Really beautiful.
And when you start connecting with that, you aren't going to have to work very hard to connect the passion part because you're going to be very passionate about that difference. And now you know what the state of passion feels like. But it would be very helpful if you had some, strengths to help you do that. Because all of us are going to come out of whatever that true north is. We're going to come out in a different way. You and I are loving this journey. I'm having a love affair with the microphone. I mean, I didn't do my first recording until 15 months ago. And within the second week, I think I did three the first day because I've always been kind of a batcher crazy guy. Because now I do like 10 in a day. And the second week, I think I did one day and it was 4 or 5. And when I finished the last one.
And just to clarify, we're talking about podcast interviews.
Yes, podcast interviews, right. And I sat back, and a lot of times things come out of me. The auditory part is that I'll say something. And now I got it out there, and I have whiteboards. I have a 12-foot whiteboard in my office. At the time, I had 3 6-foot whiteboards on 3 walls. And then I'll go kind of write it out, and I'll go, oh, my gosh, what does that mean, right? And here's what I said. You just had your Oprah moment. And I sat back in my chair for about a minute, and I didn't say anything, and I started digesting, and I'm kind of going, what does that mean? Well, the first thing I said, I think she made a few $1 billion just talking and interviewing people. And then immediately after that, so that was kind of like actually the surface level, I realized that I said, oh, my God, you just found your calling. Now, this is the guy who found his calling with Conscious Millionaire, and we haven't even discussed that I found another calling 6 months later, and I now have a global nonprofit called Conscious World, where I work with youth 18 to 25 who are doing projects to uplift humanity, and that's my biggest calling in that regard. But when I found the microphone, here I wrote this book, and I was writing blogs, and I found the microphone, I went, oh, my gosh, this is where you belong. And then 2 weeks later, so 3 weeks total, right? The lawyer in me kind of sticks up his little head and has a little observation. And I say to myself, wow, I think I'm going into the media business. So I immediately, and you can go to my website, consciousmillionaire.com, and look under the podcast tab. Each of the podcasts says Conscious Millionaire Media, a division of Conscious Millionaire Podcasts, because that's going to get spun off into a separate company. And I knew it the third week. And we didn't go to air until 2 months after I started recording, and I had, no surprise, 3 months worth of shows when I went to air. And in fact, when I started recording, I thought I was going to be 2 days a week. And I just had this cavalcade of people come forward who wanted to be on this show that didn't even exist. And I was about 3 weeks out from launching it, and I started adding it up one night in my head. I went, oh my God, if you go 2 days a week, you've already recorded enough for like a year or something. These people are going to be a little upset that their episode's not coming up for a year. I think you got to think through this. And I said, well, you've certainly got enough to go 3 days. And I said, well, you have enough to go 4, and you have enough to go 5. And I said, well, trust the universe. I think people are coming. And I'm like almost constantly 5 months booked out, and now we're starting a sheet where we're, just adding people, because it's almost, I'm grateful, I'm honored, but I also want to be incredibly respectful to people, and I don't want to, schedule people 6 and 7 and 8 months out. So now we're just creating a sheet for people, and it's an amazing journey in of itself. But I found that this microphone is where I belong, and that I'm starting stage training because I'm going, and you belong in front of thousands of people on the stage as well. It's the same kind of skill in a way.
So I want to be real clear on what you said. You said a guy that I found my calling, and then I found another calling, and now I found this calling with the microphone.
It's deeper and deeper and deeper levels.
But is it a different calling, or
it's deeper. It's deeper levels of the same calling.
So it's an unfolding of what is your purpose.
Yes.
So tell me, what is your purpose?
My purpose, I'll link it to you in numbers, and then we'll work backwards. Because 5 months ago, I'm a numbers guy. 5 months ago, I was clear about my 3s. There was Conscious Millionaire, Conscious World, and then what did I want in terms of my own life? Well, to live a life of adventure. It shouldn't be too shocking. But then I was thinking, and I said, well, what's that big, it was one night I was thinking, and I like to point out I was not drinking this night. I'm not normally drinking, but it sounds like you must have been drinking to come up with this. And I said, well, what's that big number? And I already knew what the money number is, and that is that I want $100 million, and 90 of it's just to give away, mainly to the nonprofit I've created. It's mainly to take the journey doing it and knowing other people I can call up and say, hey, Roger or Sally, this is a great cause. Let's write them a check for $1 million, and next month the money will be there again. And that's, it's being a custodian, as opposed to the owner of something. Because I believe we're custodians. I don't believe we own anything, actually. I think that's an ego delusion completely, because when we leave, it's certainly not coming with us. We're just the custodian while we're here, and that's why things are entrusted to us, but that's a whole other conversation. So, anyway, I started to realize, what is it that I want? What is the unifying part of all of this? And I said, it's about how many people can you positively impact in your life. That's really what the journey is kind of about. And I kind of started and got, played around with the 100 million number. And I liked that. But then as I went deeper and I said, I really think we could impact, we like the collective whole me, could impact more people than that. And then, kind of find like,
who is the collective whole of you?
Yeah, the collective whole. Well, I have a master's in clinical psych, so I've trained in NLP, but I've also trained in Gestalt. So in Gestalt psychology, you have all the different parts of you that are in connection with each other. So when I say we, I do have to explain that we is me, but it's all the collective parts that are working together as a whole, and then on the bigger,
your self-actualized
self. The self-actualized self, but it's also we, like this journey, everything that I accomplish really is about, I just have the most amazing connections, and they keep growing exponentially every day. Literally, it's like a logarithmic curve that's happening, is the people that I know, and then the people they connect me to, and then I connect people all the time. And it's just this web that's going out. So I'm not doing this alone. I just get a vision. That's it. And I have the drive to do something with that vision. That's really who JV is. It's a guy who gets visions and has a drive to do something with them. And then I seem to connect with people who also kind of like the vision, and they've got visions and of what they want. And so we kind of help each other, achieve those, because we're all kind of aligned. It's like, why are we on this together? Because you and I are aligned. That's why we're doing the show. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. And so I got up to 1 billion. And then what I have discovered, now you're listening to this, I want you to think about your own biorhythm, because we all have biorhythms, and there are times that we're more inspired than other times. And there are times that we get our great ideas, and it's probably about the same time of the day. For me, it's the later the night goes on and the morning comes, that's when I'm getting my big inspirations. But what I've learned is that those big inspirations have to be tested in the light of day, literally. So the next day, I got up, put it on the whiteboard, and I said, okay, now, the logic side of you needs to prove that this makes sense. This isn't just some pie in the sky kind of idea because it sounds nice. It's kind of like, I'm going to fly off the 100-story building. Well, maybe, but if you were going to do that, you might have, some things that helped you do that. So what I did is I started looking at the internet, and I said, well, gosh, what's going on the internet that wasn't going on 5 years ago or 10 years ago? Well, that's easy. That's a long list, right? And because I realized this whole thing of positively impacting 1 billion people is really an exercise in it's one exercise. It's an exercise in leverage. That's what it is. So I said, okay, how are you going to leverage to do this? Well, that's when I realized, and I asked myself the question, well, what's going to be here in 2 years to help leverage this message that keeps coming out of me to connect with other people and make a positive impact in their life? And I said, the truth is, you don't know, because it hasn't even happened. The idea is not even the person's mind who's going to create that. Mm-hmm. Right? And then I said, well, then what's going to happen in 5 years? I'm going, well, and it's a logarithmic curve where I'm. Well, if you don't know what logarithmic it means, it just means that, today we double, and then tomorrow we double, and it just keeps going faster and faster. It's not like we're adding 2 and 2 and 2. We're adding 2, and then we're adding 4, and then 8, and then 16, and it's just, but in the same time period, each one's being added. And then I said, well, what's going to happen in 5 years? And then when I got to 10, I stopped. I said, okay, you've proven it to yourself. This is good enough. So you know that it can happen. You just have to be driven and have the focus to get there.
Very exciting.
Yeah. Well, and that's what we each can do. See, that's what excites me, is to wake people up to like, wait, don't play small. Don't play with that little vision. Let's find out what that big vision is, and then let's give you some skills like how to live in the zone, like how to put the right business model together, actual practical skills to bring that out into reality so you can impact the world and have the financial success. I'd like to point out that is conscious millionaire, right? And that you can achieve it, because you can. You can. We all can. That's what we're here for. That's what this age is. It's the conscious age. We're awakening to who we really are and what our real potential is, and how by collaborating together, which is one of the biggest tools we have, we can literally accomplish literally anything. Now we're going to Mars, and now we know, yes, there very likely is life on Mars. And if there's life on Mars, there's certainly life on other planets. That's a big breakthrough. That's a paradigm shift that I don't think the world has even begun to digest what just happened.
Right, for sure. I want to go back to you and talk some more about some things that you said earlier. So you said that I've been at this my whole life.
Yeah.
So I want to know what you were like as a child, and I want to know if you've known this from day one, from the day you came out of the womb, you've known where you were going.
I don't think I knew where I was going on a conscious level. But even by the age of 5, growing up in a little town, like maybe there were 200 or 300 people out in the country, where my parents pretty much struggled financially and everybody in town did. My father farmed and my mom was a school teacher. Everybody owned little businesses. In fact, I was certain that I wasn't going to grow up to be an entrepreneur, because all I saw was that business owners had a lot of financial problems. And so that was.
And where was this?
This is in Central Florida, and we're on a big 4x5 mile lake. So I grew up out in the country, playing on docks and fishing on a cane pole for brim and bass, and then we, cut them up and eat them for dinner and, fry them in the cast iron frying pan. And when I go to the grocery store, I knew not to ask. I was an incredibly well-disciplined little child, and I knew not to ask for the candy bar. That it was either whatever was on the list was what we were getting. That was it. And that was all the money there was. And then one day when I was 5 years old, I've told the story enough times that I realized there was a detail I left out that actually was kind of humorous, because Buddha's, under the lotus tree while I was standing next to the kumquat tree, when I had this kind of like a road to Damascus experience.
When you were 5?
When I was 5. Because all of a sudden, in a very visionary sort of way, I kind of looked out in the future and I said, when I grow up, I'm going to be a millionaire. And at that moment, I honestly believe I changed even at a cellular level. And I immediately ran into because I had discovered water. I wanted to share it with my parents, right? Because now I knew the answer to life. This is going to take care of all the problems, and I could certainly go to the grocery store and get a candy bar. I ran into the house and I told my parents, and I said, when I grow up, I'm going to be a millionaire. And I distinctly remember, I'm sure for them this was, I could have just said I wanted to be a policeman or a fireman. It would have been no different, right? This was just their little boy because I was the little boy who asked every question. Why is the sky blue? Why is this? Why is that? It's just infinitely curious. At 4 and 5, I was having conversations with all my parents' friends, deep theological conversations about the nature of God. Because I'd already figured out by that time point that was the most important question in life. Is that what is God? And I just had a burning desire to understand that question. And so I ran in the house and I told my parents, I was going to be a millionaire. The first thing they said, my mom shook her fingers at me and she says, don't tell anybody. Of course, as any little 5-year-old boy would do, I went around and I told everybody in town. And I was friends with all the little old ladies whose husbands had died, and I would go visit them. And they had retired there because it was really idyllic. It was a very beautiful place. They just nobody had any money. And I could imagine them kind of looking at each other and winking. Oh, when he grows up, he's going to be a millionaire, right? Didn't faze me at all because I knew. I never doubted it for one moment. And then when I went to write my book, the editor said, well, you've got to tell your story. So I hadn't put my story in the book. It's now the first 8 pages of chapter 1. That was the hardest part to write because I had to go back and put the pieces of my life together. And why did they happen at these monumental turning points? Why did my mom shake her fingers at me? And why did it's almost like Citizen Kane and Rosebud in a way, right? Why had I remembered that all my life? Why was that a monumental thing? Not only that I had this moment of awareness, which I did. By 25, I'd made the first million. So I did grow up to do that. But why had my mother been shaking her fingers at me not to tell anyone? And then I figured it out. And it's a very important part of the story. It might be the most important for most people. We lived right across the street from the little country church, and we went to church 3 times a week. Most of the time, we were the only family there 2 nights of the week, Sunday night and Wednesday night. Didn't matter if anybody went. We were going to church. That's what we did. And my parents, very bright people, struggling, had this belief system that only bad people had that much money. You must have scammed somebody or done something illegal, become a criminal. And they didn't want me to grow up to be a bad person. And so I'm asking you, if you're listening to this today, because I don't think there are any accidents, are there any beliefs in you that have confused being good with being poor or at best just getting by? As opposed to living in complete and absolute abundance. So you can call up Roger or Sally and say, I'm going to contribute $1 million to this cause because I think we ought to get it off the ground. Will you contribute $1 million as well? That's a very different understanding of what wealth is about. And when you think of wealth, yes, do I like to live in abundance? Do I like to do beautiful things? I've gone to the Bellagio and, leased the presidential suite and it's all marble. And I have to say it's really beautiful, but it's about abundance and understanding that it's actually our natural state if we claim it. And that making money is not dirty. It's not bad. We didn't have to, take advantage of anybody. Because what are we talking about? And what is your whole life about? What's Conscious Millionaire? You're listening to this. You're on a purposeful journey. You're looking for that purpose. And how do you bring all the pieces together? Well, if you're bringing people to higher states of transformation, and that's how you make your money, please explain to me what's bad about making that money. You just made the world a better place. But that's not how it's been conceived for so long, that money and evil have somehow been connected to each other.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to money.
There's a lot of history that proves that to be true, right?
There is. But there's also a lot of history that's now happening. You think of your favorite brands right now, the ones that you really admire, that are doing well financially. And I bet you that they're value-based in a way that it connects with you.
No question.
I'll throw out one because it's a great example for me. And that's 7th generation. I've been using 7th generation products for somewhere between 10, 15 years. And I learned about them at that Green Festival that I ended up going to, because that was what I was looking at when I saw the word conscious in a hot tub, and Conscious Millionaire appeared in my forehead again. And then I said, oh my God, that's what it is. It's Conscious Millionaire. Well, I'm certain that there have got to be other products that are just as environmentally sound, chemically, empirically. But why do I love 7th generation? Because I love the vision. I love the vision that every time I'm washing my dishes or washing my laundry, that I'm impacting in a positive way 7 generations that are coming after me. And that vision inspired me. And it's that vision that inspired them to put something together. It wasn't just a marketing ploy. It was the vision that brought it all together. It's the vision. It's like Conscious Millionaire came into my forehead and I went, oh my God, this is my calling. This is my assignment. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And in fact, 7 years ago, when I was still working on the book, I was in a very expensive mastermind where almost everybody did their best to convince me to get rid of the conscious part. They said, all anybody wants is money. Nobody's going to buy that. You got to get rid of that. You're never going to be able to sell that. And I kept looking at him and I kept saying, you don't understand. Without the conscious part, it's not Conscious Millionaire. And that's what the big deal is about. Right? Mm-hmm. That's the whole big deal.
Did you ever happen to have a conversation with Stephen Covey about that before he passed on?
No, I didn't.
Because he predicted everything that you're talking about, that we'd be in this age where we are now of consciousness. He would have loved to support you and hear your vision of where you were heading. But he obviously wasn't in your mastermind.
Well, Angie, I think that and I can't tell you the day. I don't know that it was a day, but there probably was a tipping point at some exact, nanosecond of time. But I think it was 6 or 7 years ago that we kind of went through a tipping point, and it was right after the 2009 that there was a big energetic shift around that time that also brought about this energetic shift, or at least influenced, or they let's just say statistically they co-occurred. That we also went through a big shift, and I think we went through a consciousness shift where all of a sudden, when I was living in Boulder in 1999, it was the number one Whole Foods in the country and in the world, because Whole Foods wasn't anyplace else. And but what was Boulder at that point in time? Boulder's now a little bit more like Aspen, because you've got martini bars and all this, but even then it was still just more hippie-ish. And kind of granola-like, and kind of what you thought went to get organic food, right? But today, it's about as mainstream as you could get. In fact, it's so mainstream that Whole Foods is having all kinds of financial problems because everybody else is selling the same products they're selling. Whereas in the beginning, there wasn't much competition out there because most people didn't see the vision. And now it's so integrated into who we are that it's just part of the culture that there are huge numbers of people who want to eat healthy, when they don't want the GMOs and they don't want all the chemicals in their food, which, by the way...
And it's just beginning.
Yeah, and it's just beginning, right. So we're truly at the, I'm thinking about, the age of Aquarius. We're really at this consciousness awakening stage where we're at the real tip of what's going to happen in the 21st century, and it has to happen. If we're going to make it to the end of the 21st century, we must have a collaborative approach. That's why I started the nonprofit, to help to create the next generation of conscious leaders. And a triple win principle from my book is you, others, and society winning together. We must choose a path. There is no option. That's the thing that people haven't yet seen the vision. Don't understand. This isn't a philosophical argument. It's not a political argument. This is the only path that's going to work. We must find a path in which we all take responsibility for ourselves, for contributing, and for figuring out ways to do commerce and everything else we do in our life, where this is a win-win-win society and world that we're living in. That's how we get to the future. That is the path.
No question. I feel like I'm talking to myself a few times when I'm talking to you here, but can I ask you, did you ever go through a time when you were really struggling?
Yes.
And can you tell us about that?
Sure, absolutely. So I made all this money, sold these companies, and then I was trading in the stock market, managed to lose the majority of my cash, and went through... Not an unusual story. Not an unusual story. Now, fortunately, I happen to have owned real estate at the beginning of the 21st century, which went up in value a whole lot. So it's like I coined a new term. I was kind of a financially broke millionaire, and I was worth cash poor millionaire. And I at the same time was going through this whole thing where I'd moved to Boulder, shaved my head, was meditating all the time, and was questioning every aspect of what was going on in our society. And as a result, here I had all these skills for making money, for doing things, and I couldn't get myself to do any of them because for about 2 or 3 years, had myself... Now, I was fortunate that there was money coming in, but it was not at the level that I was used to. So I had to cut back. But all these things were going on around me that I could have made money, and I felt ethically wrong about anything that I could think of that would make money. I felt it was ethically wrong. And so we had the real estate implosion. I could have done mortgages. There were so many things, but I said, oh no, all of this stuff is part of a system that's got to change. And I went through 2 or 3 years of believing that having anything to do with supporting the system, quote unquote, was wrong. And therefore, anything I did to make money. Now, this is a very strange thing to go through after you've gone through this whole journey about money. But it brought me to a new values place that out of that was before I saw Conscious Millionaire in my forehead, right? Out of that came Conscious Millionaire, where I went, oh, my own awakening, because the first money I'd made wasn't unconscious. It wasn't dishonest. It was very honest and had high integrity. It's how I did business. But it wasn't about some higher purpose. It wasn't about transforming people's lives. It was just about creating a machine that made money. And so I literally went through that kind of the shadow valley, you might say, for 2 or 3 years, where I felt everything about money was wrong and bad and, almost evil. It's very interesting to have gone through that, and I'm in my 40s going through that, right? And then out of that comes Conscious Millionaire, and I see a whole new path. And I go, oh, this is what I want to teach people. I want to teach people a path that's conscious and in its own way, a spiritual journey to bringing that difference, that what I call true north that's inside of you, out of you. So it doesn't just affect, by the way, your business, because in my business model, it's a circle. I've never seen a business model like the one I created. And in the middle is your true north. It's your higher vision for what your business is here to do, along with your values, because your values are a very critical piece of all that. But it's also how you're now going to live your life. When you go through this transformative type experience, all the people I hang out with are people like me. They're people who want to change the world. They're people who want to be, usually they want to have some kind of financial aspect to that, but I also hang out with people who just, they're here on a path to create change that's conscious and that really is going to uplift people and uplift the planet, uplift how we live our lives in society. Well, these are the change makers, you could say. That's all my friends. That's who I network with. I don't hang out with anybody who's not doing that. I don't want to spend time with them because it's not on path for me. And because
it's not meaningful.
It's not meaningful. There's no meaning there.
Yeah. Can we go back for just a minute? So during this dark night of the soul for you, or Shadow Valley.
Yeah, I think dark night of the soul, I think you've got it, Angie. That's really what it was. And what a strange experience to go through, where I was paralyzed to actually come up with new ways to make money because I thought they were all wrong.
During that time, what did you use to get through that? Now, you were living in a monastery.
No, I lived in a monastery for a couple of months and from the monastery, I immediately went to Esalen on the Big Sur coast. It's ESALEN.org. And it's where a lot of the human potential movement began. And I did work study there for 3 months and kind of began about a 10-year association. I actually created a scholarship for work scholars that I funded every year on my birthday for 10 years. And,
but is this during this dark time in your life?
No, this is kind of ushering it in. And then
before the crash.
Yeah, before the crash. And then I went to Boulder and I was trading in the market, and I ignored all kinds of risk. I ignored risk management. I mean, when I look at it, I go, this is crazy that you did this because you know all this stuff. But there was all kinds of things. I mean, that would really be a 12-part series. I was working out all of these pieces that were inside of me. Because there's nothing like trading in the market or doing something like that. And there's even books about it. It becomes like a Zen mirror. And everything that's in you will come out emotionally, which is good.
Sure.
Because there's a cleansing that happens, right?
So what got you through it?
That's an interesting question. So fortunately, I had cash flow coming in from selling the company, and I had this, I had real estate that I owned. So
the money part is great.
Yeah, but
I
know, but it's related to it because all of a sudden I was able to just live okay, and that was not how I was accustomed. And so I had to make new decisions. So I decided to rent a really nice apartment, but have no money for anything else because I needed a nice environment. And I sat for 2 years working through this. And what I would tell myself, because I became very emotionally unhappy in this period of time, because I was filled with angst. Like I thought anything that I would do would be wrong, and yet it was time for me to, it seemed like it was time to make money. But everything I would think of, I'd go, no, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, and I was unhappy. I was very profoundly unhappy with my.
In hindsight, would you call this a deliberate pause? Like that was brought into your life so that you could take a break and figure this out?
Well, I think from a perfect timing perspective that it was absolutely necessary, because here's what I told myself like every day. I said, when you learn to be happy without having the money, and by that I meant the cash that you're accustomed to, then when you have it once again, you'll be happy and it won't have anything to do with it. And what had really happened is that I had gotten on an egoic level my happiness tied to how much money I had at any given moment. And I had to work.
Happens to many people.
Yeah, and I needed to work through that so that my happiness was tied to my state of being and not to the cash in my bank account. And this is how I went through that process and so I think that, was it necessary? Yeah, I think it was absolutely necessary given the work that I'm here to do, that I had to disconnect that, because how else would I know how to help anybody else disconnect it until I went through it?
Right.
It'd just be intellectual. It wouldn't have any meaning. But I actually went through that. So I understand when I meet people that that's where they're at, then I understand, okay, that's where they're at, and at some point they're going to need to do some work to go to a higher level. You've got to let go of that. So it's all about going to higher levels, I think. And that was a piece for me because I had connected the two.
And do you think everybody goes through something like this?
I think that we all go through our stages of transformation, and it all depends on what's going on with our soul, our own soul journey. And that has to do with many, many factors. I mean, I think there's a deeper factor, and that I believe we're all here, not accidentally, but I think we're all here for individual purposes. And that's what I help people discover and then bring it into their life and business. I think that what each person's journey is going to be, two people could have very similar purposes and their journeys could be very different, because there's different things for whatever reasons. We can make up stories about it, but let's just say that everybody has things they need to work through, that we're all moving to higher levels and higher levels. I mean, I do some work about money ceiling, but I go, you never finish this work, by the way, because if you look at, the richest people on earth, they're measuring their wealth in tens of billions. Nobody's measuring it in trillions. Yet logically, that's just once again, it's just a leverage issue. But there's also a mindset issue. Until somebody climbs the highest mountain, other people don't believe they can do it. But when somebody does, then other people go, oh, well, you can do that. Now I'm going to figure out my way to do it. So within ourselves, we're constantly going through ceilings that were great. There were floors at one time, and the faster we grow, the more we do this on a regular basis. So we're constantly transforming in an upward manner. And so we're going to encounter all these things in ourselves, and it's great that we need to have structures. If you didn't have some beliefs as a structure, you'd be purely psychotic. And so the structures serve a purpose, but holding on to a structure past its purpose serves no purpose. Mm-hmm. Except to hold us back. And that's not in ours or anybody else's highest and best interest. So,
right. So how about today? What do you feel like you have to do to stay on purpose today? Do you engage in practices? Is it innate? It's not something you even think about?
No. Well, Buddha might have reached enlightenment, but I'm on my journey. I'm constantly going through things. So right now, when I went back and I took care of my dad when he was dying, I gained 100 pounds. So I started a second show called the Conscious Millionaire Health Reality Show. And I'm in the process of losing 100 pounds. I could probably be doing it faster if I only took one route, and that was, how do I just get the weight off the fastest way possible? But it's the third time I've gained weight in my life in a big way, and it's the biggest that I've ever gained. And I told the universe, that's my language for it, you make up anything you'd like. I said, this time I want to heal so that when I get to my ideal weight, it'll be my ideal weight for life, because I will have healed what brings this about in me. So that makes it a different journey. And so what's happening is I'm working with one person in particular right now, and who has Eastern medicine practices and Qigong and, meditation. And so we're kind of taking that path and then doing some reframing of events that happen in my life. And so I'm allowing myself, and that really is the correct word, to bring up things in my life that need to heal and to do the healing work. And so this is a journey of not just the 100 pounds is, as much as anything, the metaphor. The real work is the healing work. It's bringing that about in a holistic way, in a way that's good for my soul, in a way that will put me in a state. And as I do it, I'm going through different stages. For instance, I spent 5 years really learning about wine and collecting wine. I had about 1,200 bottles. And I just did a move, and about 4 months ago, I sold 700 bottles of really great wine. And I kind of agonized about it for 3 or 4 months until I came to a clarity of going, yeah, all of that was great, but it really doesn't serve you. And so I still have 400 bottles, and my big joke is I think some clients are going to get some great bottles of wine because I'm just, I've had 1 bottle of wine in 5 months since I did that. So I'm realizing that for me to reach the state that I need to be in to sustain my life and put me at my highest level of energetic health and fitness that's going to allow me to do my work at my highest level and be here to really enjoy my life so that I'm in a healthy state, means that I'm shifting. I'm moving to more raw vegetables. I'm shifting a lot of things, and it's happening because a lot of it has happened, now that you bring it up, a lot of what is happened after I got clear that I wanted to positively impact 1 billion people, because now I have a very tangible, clear goal that's really kind of like a beacon. It's like a lighthouse. And it's like, will it move me there? Why am I, all of a sudden I'm getting on a ton of shows intentionally. Why? Because I want to get the message out there. I want to positively impact people. It serves the bigger purpose of positively impacting 1 billion people and bringing about the transformation that I believe I'm on the earth to do. And a lot of that is waking people up to the transformation that they're on the earth to do. I mean, because that's my kind of at the core of all this.
For sure. For sure. Going back to you for a moment,
Yep.
You said you have things to heal, and we don't have to go into the details of what each of those are. I'm sure they're quite personal. But why do you think that you've gained large amounts of weight 3 times in your life?
Yeah, I think that I, on a very practical level, grew up in a kind of an extraordinarily dysfunctional household, which if Virginia Satir is correct. Virginia Satir, if you don't know who she is and you're listening, Virginia Satir was probably the best known in the 1900s family therapist. And she's famous for saying, 96% of families are dysfunctional, right? So the truth is we're all growing up in our own version of dysfunctional families. But I think that maybe it had a bigger impact on me because not only was it an only child, but I thought about that recently. I don't know that would have made any difference. But if you're listening to this and you feel like what you sense energy maybe more than other people, and you're on this path to do this higher work because you're connected to something in a way that you're aware of, that other people may very well be connected to, but may not be aware of. So I think that when you take that kind of a journey, you kind of begin your work really early, and things impact you. So by 8, I was eating as a way to escape all the mess that was going on around me because I felt like I was in control of that. I've gone back and looked at these pieces. And so those are the kind of healing pieces I'm having to do where I literally find myself spontaneously these days, kind of like, I had my Oprah moment came out of me. 2 days ago, I said something and I went, yeah, that's actually true. I said, food's not my friend. And what I meant by that is that I've been treating food as a friend. So when I eat food, I would be spending time with a friend. But food, the part of this transition that's going on with me is that I'm increasingly looking at food as a source of nutrition that supports me on my journey. That's a very different relationship than food as a place to go escape, or food as a way to handle fear or loneliness. So that's what I mean by healing work, is going back and going, well, what was I doing? Well, in my situation, at that moment in time, that was probably the best that I could do. Because I was one of the few things I had any control over. And if you've, grown up in a situation like this is not an unusual pattern. We're talking about a lot of people have gone through pieces like this. But the thing is, at some point, you have to go look in the mirror and say, well, am I ready to heal this? Because if you're ready to heal this, then you might find yourself selling 700 bottles of wine that you very carefully spent 5 years, collecting and paid to be stored for 10 years and then go, well, that's kind of an interesting experience, but it doesn't serve me anymore. So If it doesn't serve me, time for it to leave my life, because there are other things I want to accomplish, and there are things that will serve me better. And what would serve me better is I find myself drinking a lot of green tea these days. I mean, like a lot, because I love green, especially with jasmine. So that's an example.
Such an interesting and important, very important conversation. I'm sure some of us that are listening can relate to what you're talking about, having struggles with weight. But you briefly touched on something I want to go back to for a minute that I think we don't talk about enough. And you started to mention that if you're someone that, maybe these are my words, not JV's words, but if you're someone that is a healer, or you're someone that is sensitive to the energy around you and you don't necessarily understand that, maybe you're intuitive, many words could describe this, but you feel the pain or the anger of those around you, you might not know that. I think that's what you were referring to. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think those of us who are particularly here to do some level of soul work, and when you talk about Conscious Millionaire, there's certainly obviously that's right in the center of it, because you can't decide how to build your business till you know what your true north is, because that's going to be.
And when you talk about people that are interested in finding their purpose, and not everybody's so interested in that topic.
Right. If for some people, if you're listening to this, I think there's probably a very high probability that you've already come to a conclusion that purpose is central to how you're going to live your life. And that knowing as much about your purpose as possible is in your highest and best interest, because it really is your path forward. And in order to sense that, we have to be conscious in a sensitive way. And that also means that when...
And what do you, I'm sorry, but what do you mean by sensitive?
Sensitive in an aware sort of way. So let's look at this kind of on a practical thing, that if energy if energy is packets of information, then the more aware we are, sensitive to the awareness that is true, the more we pick that up. But that also means we pick up other people's emotions. We pick up all this energy that's in a room, and we're aware of it. Because when we walk in a room, we can pick up things, or we can watch patterns, and we just see things. It's why I really am a great coach, because I can hear. I listen for what's there, and I listen for the gap just as much as I listen for what was said. And that makes you also more sensitive in the world when you're walking down a street or you're in a city. It's one of the reasons I particularly need to be in nature part of the time. Because
I would agree. I would agree with all those things. Those are the same reason I'm a great coach, same reason that I can feel other people's energy walking down the street and need to be in nature. But I think this is an important conversation for someone that's listening that doesn't understand that they have this trait to their personality. So if you're listening to us and you think, hey, this seems like it might apply to me, there are many ways to learn more about energetic sensitivity, and you can reach out to either one of us, and I'm sure we'd be happy to send you some information. But as it relates to weight loss, I think you might be onto something, JV.
Well, I think that I am. It seems to be moving me in the right direction. However, it is a work in progress, and it's one where I've said, this is what I've already made the decision that this is what I'm going to do. And having made that decision, it's kind of like going out camping and feeling like having this sense that I should pick up the third cord of wood, and then that I should build the fire really bright, and then I should look into the fire, and it kind of purifies my soul and cleanses me in a certain, very clearly. And brings up things that are very deep to my soul and my purpose, and how I can utilize those to help other people. And, today I was on a phone, with somebody who I, coached, and was able to, help them move forward, and outlined, how to go forward for their life, because I listened to where they're at. So the thing is, that I've already signed up. I guess that's the thing. I've already signed up for this journey. The wine, was the bigger portion of the wine was the first thing to go. But what's also going are ways of eating and ways of living that don't serve me. And they're not going like all at once. I sold 70% of the wine. I have 400 bottles. I don't know what will happen with all those 400 bottles. I kind of have a feeling I'm not going to be drinking them all. I think I almost feel certain of that. And so I'm kind of that's a great thing about transformation is it doesn't happen all at once, and it doesn't happen in a straight line because we make a bit of the transition and then we have to digest it.
That's right. We have to assimilate.
Because we're creating
a version of ourselves.
Exactly, Angie. We're creating a whole new version of ourselves, and it's not like we walk through a portal and now we're all cleansed and everything is new. It's like we're going through lots of portals, and sometimes we try it on for a little while and we go, okay, but what do you do with all those feelings you used to have? And now you go, oh, but I kind of want to do that old way again. And you do. And I do. And I go do that old way for a day. And then I go, oh yeah, I don't really want to live like that. And then you go do this new way for a few more days. And that's what it's like for me right now. That's exactly what it's like.
It's practice.
It is practice. Practice. Well, when I went and lived at the Buddhist monastery, I was given a meditation teacher, and we would meet together. And the first thing she said to me, I think gave me the greatest relief, and I share it with people because it's really a lesson about practice versus perfection. I'm absolutely certain when I got to the Buddhist monastery that I was coming here to become a perfect meditator, right? After all, I came there to meditate, right?
And who knows what the definition of
whatever that is. And the first thing she said to me was like, this isn't about being perfect. The meditation is practice. And then she told me what it was practice for. She says, it's practice being present. Well, my mind liked that, and it turned out that was correct. That meditation, to me, I think is one of the best practices of learning to be present. And we can't make any great decisions in our life. I mean, my whole formula for creating wealth starts with being the first of 3 steps, of course, is conscious. Because until we're conscious of who we are and where we want to go and what's going on around us and what's the path we could take and, what's our purpose and how does that come into all of this and what resources do we need, how could we possibly build a good business? We can't. I can guarantee you can't do that. You're certainly not going to build a conscious business, and a conscious business is one that's not only going to have awareness at just knowing the right kinds of things to do, but it's going to have a visionary awareness to it as well. And that's another part of consciousness. So once I understood that, then I got going on the practice of practicing, because that's what meditation is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I so much to talk about here. I think you're going to have to come back another time so we can talk some more. Maybe.
Well, wait, I thought we were going for that 12 hours.
I think we might have to do those in stages, but perhaps you'll come back when you have journeyed down your path of weight loss and tell us how that's going. But just to end that, I would suspect that because we're talking about practice, that going back to help your father transition toward the end of his life brought you to a place of remembering many of the things, at least on some level, that you were dealing with as a child.
Well, actually it is, and then that's an important piece of it because I gained almost all the weight in the very last part of his life, and continued for another 3 months after he died as I went through everything in his home. And what happened was exactly that. I came face to face because of just a host of things that happened that I think without exception, every emotional button in me got pushed. And as they each got pushed, I went through my own reactive kind of behaviors that happens when those get pushed, all the while being focused on knowing my father was dying. He had a stroke. I talked to the doctors. I said, I'm not a sugarcoating guy. I got to make a lot of decisions. Tell me. And they said he's going to die in 3 to 4 months. He died 2 days short of 4 months. So I knew where we were headed every day. And my singular goal with him was to guide him through a very good process of dying. I wanted him to have a good death. And amid that, there was a lot of chaos going on where a lot of buttons were getting pushed. And that's where all the weight gain came from. Now, when I look at that and I go in the scheme of life, that's a good thing because at that moment, that was the perfect moment for every button in me to get pushed from one event to another event because it brought them all up, right? And now, in order to move through the layers of weight, literally, all in those cells, and is the energetic patterns that I'm healing. And so it's in many ways giving me a great opportunity to do this major healing work in my life that otherwise would have been kind of under the covers, so to say. But this brought that possibility up. And this serves me, and it serves other people that I do this healing work. It's in the best interest of every person on this planet that I heal, just as like it's in the best interest of every person on the planet that you heal. And by you, I mean you're listening to this. That's why we're all having this conversation, because in many ways I think it's a conversation about awareness and healing. Because that's what we're doing. I remember when I was living in Boulder 15 years ago, it was one night, because I'm kind of a night person. I think it was about 1 o'clock in the morning, and I was at a stoplight about a block from where I lived, and there was nobody around, right? And I said to myself at the stoplight, I had this profound insight that stayed with me. At every moment, we're either healing or resisting healing. And that's really what's going on. And it's the healing that brings us to the awareness, and it's the healing that brings us to our wholeness, and it's the healing that brings us to our purpose. And it's the healing that takes us down the path so that we can be of profound contribution to the world and do what we're on the planet to do. And only you listening, only you can do your part. And that's not a trite thing. It's a truth that we're a mosaic and we're all intricately interconnected. And the more that each of us wakes up and takes on the path of living our truth and our purpose, the more the planet and civilization on this planet will heal as we move forward. It's the only way for that to happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. I think we should just end now. Like, that's so beautiful what you said. Let me ask you a lightning round of yes, no, short answer questions, please.
Okay.
Do you think passion and purpose are the same things?
No.
Do you think everybody has a life purpose?
Yes.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being high, how important is following your joy in igniting your own life purpose?
12.
Did you ever quit your job to follow your purpose, and do you think somebody needs to quit?
I never had a job, but I sold a business because I wasn't living my purpose. And okay. I think that you need to transition. I mean, I work with entrepreneurs, so that's what I work with. But whether you want to work at a corporation or you want to own a business, whichever you want to do, I think it's critical that you take a path where you're able on a daily basis, as what you're doing is an expression of that deeper purpose.
Thank you. What brings you, JV, great joy?
The greatest joy I have is helping somebody else wake up. There's no greater joy that I can have.
If you unexpectedly amassed a great-sized fortune, what would you do differently?
I would build the business and the nonprofit quicker.
Very good. And just in getting ready to close today, tell me, what should listeners learn from your life?
To live your truth, because I really think that's what I've been doing since I was a little boy.
Okay, thank you. So if there's somebody out there listening to our conversation today and they're feeling overwhelmed and thinking, where do I start? Do you have a resource you could recommend for them, or what would you tell them to do?
Yeah, I do have a resource. I'd love to give it to everybody. And it's my formula for creating wealth. And it's not something I sat down and wrote. It's something that I figured out I was doing. And how did I go from broke to making the first $1 million in 3 years? What was I doing? And I was doing the same thing over and over again. And it's that I was taking 3 steps. And it started with being conscious and then focused on a specific result and only taking actions that achieved it. But there were certain things at each one of those steps that I needed to do. And then it turned out that I was also analyzing and getting to the results and learning constantly and iterating and going back through the process. So I have an ebook that explains exactly how to do that, gives you diagrams, gives you exercises, and there's a link in it to a $97 fast track training that has 16 videos in it that talk about how you can utilize these principles to build your business. So you can get that at consciousmillionaire.com/growth formula, just one word, no spaces, consciousmillionaire.com/growth formula. And I would love, for you to be part of the Conscious Millionaire community. If you're building a business that's conscious and you want to be with a group of people who are doing the same thing, that's what we're about.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that generous offer. I look forward to reading it myself. Thank you, sir.
Angie, thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. What a great conversation. I feel like we've just barely scratched the surface, and I know that we're going to have another conversation or two. So I'm very honored to get to spend this time with you today. You've been listening to the Life Purpose Advisor podcast with me, Angie Swartz, and my guest today, J V Crum III. If you like what you heard today on the Life Purpose Advisor podcast and you'd like to work with me on finding your purpose, please contact me at Angie@lifepurposeadvisor.com. You can also sign up for our free self-study at lifepurposeadvisor.com. And we'll see you next time.